Shabbat Shalom. How many of you are so thankful that you have the opportunity to lend your voice and declare, holy is he, that he is faithful? Amen. It never ceases to amaze me that we're told in the book of Revelation that they surround his throne, and that's what is declared. Holy, holy, holy. And we have the opportunity and the blessing and the ability to lend our voice and join the voices around the throne and declare the same thing. And my goodness, what better time to do that than on Shabbat, when he promises that there's an opening, there's a doorway into his presence. It's a scheduled appointment. And he promises that he will inhabit the praises of his people Israel, and that when you begin to declare, holy, holy, holy are you, kadosh, 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 my goodness, he's made a covenant promise that his presence will be made manifest in your life and in the midst of your situation. And that is just mind-staggering to me. I want to say thank you to Joy as well. It was funny when I was going over and praying how to launch into this, how to start the message. The verse that he had given me was Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11. And she set it up here in the midst of the praise and worship. And there she is. And it's so powerful to me because how many realize that Yahweh does in fact have plans for his people as a whole and also for you as an individual. Things that you may be going through in your life right now has not taken him by surprise. He has a plan. He has a purpose. And it's to bring you to an expected destination. And how many realize that if I understand perhaps what that expected destination is, in the midst of all the chaos that may be going on in my own life or may be going on in the world around me, my goodness, you can't go anywhere without being bombarded by chaos, by tohu vabohu, waste and desolation that is literally just being unleashed on the earth as we see it. But in the midst of all that, his voice still speaks and says, but I have an expected destination for you. And it is not dictated to by the things that may be going on in the world around you, but all of this is to actually push you and direct you and cause you to meet me at that set expected destination. And as she shared, it goes on to talk about that I will be found when you seek me. And if you begin to look in the Hebrew language, you'll find that the term for seek me, darash, it doesn't mean that, oh my goodness, in the midst of when I'm being squeezed, I'm going to cry out, I need help right now. But it infers that I have continually, literally beat a path. I have tread a path over and over and over to find you where I know that you have said you will be. And I have continually directed my steps and my life in order to meet you in that place. Well, how many of you realize that infers, I believe, it also has a time aspect to it because Yahweh's made a promise that there are set times, there are appointments. And if you will direct your steps, your course, and you will meet me at this set destination, at this set time, then you will find me. My goodness, we find ourselves at the most repeated time to direct our steps, to meet him at a set destination, at a set place, and it's called Shabbat. Amen. And with that said, we're going to launch into the teaching for today. It's taken from this week's Torah Portion Beha'alotekha. It's translated as when you set up or when thou lightest. And we find that it's taken from Numbers chapter 8, verses 1 through chapter 12, verse 16. And if you read the entire Torah portion, you'll find that Israel has been camped out there at Sinai. They've built the tabernacle, everything is ready, and now it's time to go. This Torah portion deals with them preparing to depart from Sinai. And yet I thought it quite interesting that it begins with what seems a short side note regarding the care and the lighting of the menorah. That seems a small matter compared to the larger scope of events that are going to transpire ahead of them. And yet we need to take a moment and understand what's happening here. And when you begin to lay a proper foundation, you'll understand the tabernacle and its vessels. It's not just an ordinary tent. It's not just an ordinary structure. And Yahweh did not just give them these details just because. There's a pattern, there's a design. It is patterned after what Moshe was shown in the heavens. And so in turn, we find that whatever has been written and etched in the heavens, literally that salvation plan of redemption and restoration regarding his house, is now, that same message has now been embedded and literally poured into this tent, this tabernacle that's been designed after that pattern. It too has been built to reveal the same message. It contains the message of redemption, restoration for the houses of Israel. And just as the luminaries in the heavens were there, placed there for signs, for seasons, for days, for months, in order to direct the course of the house, so this tabernacle will do the same. It will become a timepiece, a clock, a calendar, meant to direct the course of Israel. Why? For them to be able to arrive and understand exactly where the set destination was and when the set time for that appointment was. And so we find that Beha'alotekha, when you begin to look at this, we find that it's translated in our King James as when thou lightest, when you light the menorah. And yet it completely eradicates and hides and conceals exactly what Yahweh was speaking to the children of Israel. Because this phrase comes from the root verb in the Hebrew. It's the term Allah. And it means to go up, ascend, to climb, to meet or to lift oneself. And it specifically is a term that's used to describe one that is ascending or meeting or arising in order to go up before the presence, before the face of Yahweh. And you'll find that it's the root of the term olah, as in the olah, or the whole burnt offering, whose smoke as well, it was called that because the smoke would ascend. It literally reveals once again the root concept of this Hebrew root stem as it's connected to the idea of ascending, steps, a stairway, a gateway, an access point. And so we find that this Hebrew word not only encompasses the concept of an access point, specifically a way of access to the presence of Yahweh. But when you continue to look at this word, Beha'alotekha, this root Allah, it also includes an aspect of time. And so when we begin to delve into this, my goodness, as Israel prepares to leave, it seems that Yahweh is giving them some very specific instructions as they prepare to depart from this location, that seems as if he's giving them instructions that will deal with them understanding how to approach him, how to meet with him, and when to meet with him. And that perhaps the way they handle this is going to affect the course of their house. It's going to affect the next steps. It's going to affect future generations. And this aspect of time with this word Allah, it's interesting because it's directly connected with the tracking of time, because another meaning of this word, it means degrees, marks, or lines, literally one above another. And these lines, by means of a gnomon, would intercept the solar light to cast a shadow, determining the height of the sun and consequently the time of day. It's the root of the Hebrew term for a sundial, literally their clock. And so from previous teachings, we've already laid a firm foundation that's been laid regarding that the Moedim, the divine appointments, these are moments, scheduled appointments that act as doorways that literally become that Allah. They lend access to Yahweh, in which you are to appear, to present yourself at a set time, at a set destination, in order to have access to the presence of Yahweh. Could it be then that as Israel prepares to continue on in their physical journey, Yahweh is strategically reminding them that the course of their future, the course of their house, is dictated to and a reflection of this Allah, of this appearance, of this coming up, ascending, the understanding of when and how to access him. And we find that their restoration, their inheritance, their salvation, their redemption, their healing, the blessings of his covenant, of his presence, are all guarded by these doors, by these moments of time when Israel would have the right and the opportunity to go up and appear before him. And we find that as we look at the context of what's taking place here, Israel's about to depart from Sinai and Horeb. And when you begin to look at the language regarding this location, I believe quite firmly that the Hebrew language makes it quite clear that this was the location that was a gateway to Eden. Literally where the presence of Yahweh was, where Adam first dwelt and had access unprecedented from that time forward. They stood at this doorway, and they had the opportunity to see fallen man restored, to become a nation of priests, to Allah, to ascend up the mountain and stand before the menorah. Not one patterned after what Moshe saw, but literally before the burning lampstand. The one that walked between the pieces on their behalf. The one that had cut a covenant with his name on the line regarding the keeping of that covenant promise. And just like Adam, when they are called, they're not found. They refuse to go up. And now we find that just like Adam, they're being sent forth from this location. Do you think perhaps that the instructions of this menorah, the lighting, this pattern that was going to be taking place daily within this tabernacle, that these instructions have something to do with a promised future redemption that Israel now, this is going to be what you hold on to. This is the promise. This is going to be a reminder as you're sent out. Yes, you're still in exile, but there's a pattern, there's a promise, there's something that's being declared every time in the lighting of this menorah. Now we find the menorah was composed of 7 branches. And we understand when we look at this term, Beha'alotekha, literally when you ascend to this menorah, which is being patterned after, it's revealing spiritual concepts, that it's connected to this concept of a doorway, a gateway, and also time. That there are moments of times when the doorway would be open to have access to his presence, even when fallen Adam was in exile. And when you look at these 7 branches, we find that the number 7 immediately connects us to the concept of the Shabbat, the 7th day. My goodness, a divine appointment, a moment in time, a doorway that's opened when fallen Adam can shuv, can return to the covenant, can return to the house that he's been sent out from. Shabbat. That number 7 as well connects to the 7 Moedim, or the 7 feasts or divine appointments that would be scheduled out on the yearly circuit of the calendar of Yahweh. Each one forming a doorway, each one an access point where fallen man would once again, there's a moment, there's a doorway that you're going to have access to your healer, to your restorer, to your deliverer, to the presence of the one that saved you. Amen? And we find that in the midst of this tabernacle pattern, no detail is spared regarding how this is to be set up. Yahweh is so specific. Why? Because it deals with the redemption plan of his house. And so as he begins to give these instructions, we find that the menorah stood opposite the table of showbread. When you look at the term showbread in the Hebrew language, it's from the Hebrew term panim. Literally the bread of his presence or the bread of his face, or faces. With 12 loaves. Once again, these numbers are important. They're significant. 12 loaves representing not only the 12 tribes of Israel, but the 12 months of his calendar and the 12 constellational signs of the Mazzaroth, where once again, that same message has been etched. Read, count the stars, Abraham. Read the message of redemption. So shall your house be. It will literally be walked out in your generations. We find these 12 constellational signs, the 12 loaves, the 12 months, the 12 tribes of Israel, all are forming the same pattern, revealing something that Yahweh is teaching us. So we find the menorah within the tabernacle acted as a timepiece, revealing not only the pattern of how to calculate the appointed times of Yahweh, but their significance. Because remember, it's patterned after the same design, the tabnith, that Moshe is shown regarding Yahweh's throne and access to his presence. Now, as we continue to look at this, and if you backtrack, right now we're in Numbers chapter 8, and he's highlighting this. He doesn't talk about anything else, just the lighting of the menorah. But if we backtrack to Exodus chapter 26:35, we find some more details are given for us to understand why is it so significant. Something that something that the rest of Israel would never see. They would never see this take place in the tabernacle. It was accessed only by the priests. And yet they're being told these instructions. Something's happening in the midst of the dwelling place of Yahweh, whether you see it or not, on your behalf. Amen. In Exodus 26:35, we're told, and thou shalt set the table without the veil, talking about the table of showbread, and the candlestick over against the table on the other side of the tabernacle toward the south, and thou shalt put the table on the north side. I want to look at that phrase or word, over against. You shall set the candlestick over against the table. The Hebrew term used there, it's Strong's number 5227, nochach, and it means to be in front of, in the sight of, on behalf of, purposefully for, or on account of. You will set this menorah, this flaming light, on behalf of, purposefully for, on account of, and in front of this table of my presence. This same root word means straightness, directness, rightness. It indicates to act or speak directly, rightly, or truly. And as you begin to look at the meanings of the roots of this word, it begins to take on less of a meaning of a placement, put it over against, and it begins to reveal instead the purpose of what this lampstand is doing, what it's representing after the pattern in the heavenlies. It's speaking, it's acting on behalf of or on account of someone else. It's interesting as well that the numerical value of this Hebrew word nochach, over against, it equals 78. And it's the same value as the Hebrew word Galilah, or Ha-Galilee. Both of these a rendering of the English term Galilee. Galilee is translated as meaning a circuit. Literally a circle. It's where we find the Messiah doing most of his earthly ministry, in the circuit. He's following a pattern. He does his ministry within his circuit. The king, the son, the bridegroom leaves and it makes its circuit. And what's happening is he's ministering his redemption and salvation plan as he makes his circuit. Galilee, a circuit, however, can also mean a boundary or a territory. So we find here in this description of something that would be taking place in the midst of this tabernacle structure, patterned after what was written and shown in the heavenlies, we have the menorah representing the Messiah, the light of the world, was over against nochach, the 12 loaves, literally representing the 12 tribes of Israel, revealing that within the circuit of his calendar appointments, his time, his moedim, that they acted not only as a way of keeping time, but those same moedim, the calendar you keep, the appointments you show up to, the times that you understand and know, my goodness, it's time for me to Allah, to ascend, to go before and know that I have access to his presence. It will mark boundaries and territories. In other words, those found within the hub of this cyclical calendar that he's revealing, these are the times that you have access to me. These are the moments when you are commanded to appear before me, that those that do so and are obedient to do that, it then reveals that they are found within the king's territory. They are found within the king's boundary lines. And therefore, they are in covenant and able to access the covenant promises and protection. How important is it to keep Shabbat? How important is it to know when his divine appointments are? To understand that I've not been lied to or I'm not following what someone else told me, but I know that this is the moment when he's promised that he's going to appear. And if I am obedient to place myself within his circuit to direct the course of my steps, then I have now availed myself of all the protection, the promises, and the blessings that are found when you are in covenant with the king. My goodness, how significant is it to the body to understand that, especially in the midst of the days that are in front of us, when tohu vabohu, waste and desolation, is going to literally be unleashed. but to know, my goodness, I'm within a territory. I'm within a boundary line that all those things that are being unleashed upon the world are not allowed to cross. We find that it is within this circuit that Israel, represented by the loaves, are spoken over. That's what that term nokach means. It literally means to speak, to act on behalf of. They're spoken over directly, and we find that the Messiah is speaking on behalf of them. As they are spoken over, it indicates they're being transformed into what is being spoken over them. They're literally taking on the words that are being declared. Rightness, straightness, righteousness. In other words, it's only within this place that they're literally being transformed into righteous Israel who stands upright. Could it be then that the fullness of Israel, the name, that prophetic mantle that was declared over Jacob, which literally indicates one who stands upright, Yashar El, before Elohim, one who is considered the heir of the promised covenant, that the fullness of that identity cannot be manifested outside of understanding his calendar and walking within these boundary lines? Because it's only within this circuit, within these boundary lines, that you have placed yourself where it's declared over you and you begin to be transformed into that. In other words, to see the manifestation of the sons that's spoken of in Romans chapter 8:19, which all of creation is waiting and groaning for, the manifestation of these weos sons, these mature sons and daughters capable of handling the kingdom affairs, I believe a synonym literally of the name Israel itself, that it would entail, for them to be seen, for the manifestation of these individuals, it would entail then the return of these same sons and daughters to the territory or the boundaries of his covenant calendar, in order for them to be transformed and then revealed as such. In fact, you'll find that the concept of exile, to be removed and outside of his presence, outside of that covenant relationship, is literally connected to the concept of being outside of this circuit of his divine appointments, his calendar, his way of time. It's first seen with Adam. The moment Adam compromises and he is sent out into exile, he is removed from the Garden of Eden. The name Eden literally has the same root as Moed. He's removed from the garden of appointed times. And outside of this circuit, he is now in exile. We see this pattern holds true again when Israel enters into the promised land, yet later they choose to once again reject the calendar and the appointments of Yahweh, to not direct their steps according to his circuit. They ignore and despise the Shemitah years, the Sabbath years. And what happens? They're exiled. They're removed. They're outside of it. And so it seems as if what's beginning to be revealed is that there are these doorways, there's these access points regarding when Yahweh will still in his mercy be accessed by those who will diligently seek him. And he has it scheduled and laid out, and it's the Moedim, these appointments where he will meet with the one that has previously been in exile. In fact, the wording that's found here in Numbers chapter 8, verse 2, regarding this menorah seems to emphasize this same concept. Here it also in the English says that over against. It says in chapter 8, verse 2, "Speak unto Aaron and say unto him, when thou lightest the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light over against the candlestick." Here that phrasing in the Hebrew of over against, describing how the menorah is going to give light, it's composed of the phrase in Hebrew el mul. It comes from the root word, Strong's number 4136, mol, which means front, in front of, or before, and yet it comes from the root word which means to circumcise or to be cut off. And it's quite interesting because circumcision deals with removing a covering or a veil of the flesh, a principle both in the natural and the spiritual. It literally can symbolize darkness that must be circumcised or removed to expose the light. And then you have the term el, it's el mul. The term el means to, toward, unto, of motion. There's a sense of a movement that's taking place. It means to tend to anything, to verge to or towards any place. And it's used of a turning motion, and specifically describes when one reaches a terminus or a mark, a set destination. In other words, it seems to be revealing that not only have the access points to the presence of Yahweh been healed, they've been veiled, they've been hidden, until a set destination, a terminus or a mark has been reached, which is going to cause the unveiling of this and once again reveal the light of his presence. But it also seems to indicate that in order to access this doorway, in order to ascend to Allah, to come before him, once again, there's going to be a cutting away. There's going to be a circumcision. There's going to be some things that are not allowed to pass once you reach this mark, this terminus. Things that were winked at in the past, things that were allowed, my goodness, now when you get to this point, it's about a revealing, the manifestation of the Weah sons of Yisrael. So things that have been part of our character and our nature in the past, this now must be cut away as you prepare to reach this terminus, this mark, this set destination. Amen? When you look at this whole phrase here in Numbers chapter 8, verse 2 in the Hebrew, it's Beha'alotekha et ha-nerot el mul pnei ha-menorah. In other words, when you approach to ascend before the fiery olive tav, the et ha-nerot, when you approach to ascend before the fiery olive tav, these 7 doorways, these lamps, these 7 doorways, the moedim, these appointments will circumcise. They will cut away the veil that hides and covers in order to reveal his face, his panei, el mul panei, when one reaches the terminus or the mark. They have been redeemed and brought out, Israel, set upon the path, all for the purpose of literally circumcising or cutting away the veil that has hid his face, and to once again find themselves coming panim al panim, face to face. This was the purpose of the encounter at Sinai. And yet, we find that when Israel fails to do so, his face, his presence, once again, there's a veil put over it. It's hid. And yet, he's reminding them that there are moments in time where this veil will be removed and you will have access to see him. You'll have access to his presence. And we find that not only does this deal with the weekly Shabbat and the yearly Moedim, but when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, you find that through the thousands of years of exile, each circuit, when each circuit was completed, each time, each year, each circuit was bringing you one step closer to the terminus, to the mark, to a set destination that has been scheduled and ordained, and he's waiting. Each circuit cuts away or circumcises the veil, bringing his people one step closer until the last and final generation will finally reach the terminus, the mark, the point. And they will find themselves panim al panim, face to face. And the Apostle Paul says it this way: I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know one thing: we will look like him. It will be the revealing of his face again. Amen? In fact, the Greek word apocalypse, which is a word that's probably on a lot of people's minds right now as things are starting to heat up, things are starting to happen. Wait a minute, what's going on in this world? It looks and sounds like so many things happening from the book of Revelation, the book of Apocalypse. But how many realize the Greek term apocalypse literally means to reveal, to uncover? It may be destruction and devastation for the world on the outside, but for those who find themselves in the territory of the King, it's a season of revealing. He is going to reveal his face, his presence, his power, his authority, and he is going to uncover in the sense of revealing those who are found within his territory. That's mine. Amen? So we find that this 7-branched luminary, the menorah, patterned seemingly after the heavenly pattern, it shines onto these 12 loaves, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, who as well correspond to the 12 constellational signs. And we find that every time the priest was obedient to tend to the menorah daily, It was a reminder of the continuation of a covenant promise and an oath regarding the house of Israel. The message that was written in the heavens, the menorah would then illuminate and shine, literally etching and revealing his plans and purpose regarding the 12 tribes, the 12 houses, as it shined upon the loaves. And so we find that it was a rehearsal daily in the midst of this tabernacle, in the midst of the place that represented the place of his presence, and it was being patterned after what was happening in the heavenlies. In other words, the menorah, the light of the world in the heavenly tabernacle daily was declaring and putting in remembrance that there was a covenant promise regarding the 12 houses or the 12 tribes, the seed of Abraham. And so in the tabernacle, the earthly priest who was given this charge, he was literally imitating and patterning after what was taking place in the heavenlies. And it was a reminder, a witness in the heavens and a witness on the earth. Now it also seems to emphasize then that the revelation of his plans and therefore the inscribing of those same plans onto those gathered, because the menorah, it is specifically commanded that it is going to shine. It literally shines its light on these loaves that are placed before it. It emphasizes that those plans would be etched and inscribed upon those gathered, seemingly would take place at a scheduled, declared, appointed time. In other words, there was an appointed time designed to rejuvenate, refresh, and restore those who were obedient to appear. It was a constant covenant reminder that even while in exile, the doorways of the Moedim would give Israel access to a place of refreshment, restoration, healing. You may not be able to permanently dwell literally in the hub of this, but there are doorways and moments that in my mercy I'm going to reveal restoration, redemption, healing. And if you'll present yourself, that message will be encoded. It'll literally be etched into your very DNA. And the message that's written in the stars, so shall your seed be. Amen? And I thought it quite interesting that when you read Numbers chapter 8, you'll find that immediately on the heels of talking about this ritual with the menorah, lighting of the menorah, he then goes into the passages revealing the taking of the Levites. And the Levites being offered up to be assistants to the priesthood on behalf of the rest of Israel. So in the midst of declaring the promise and the revelation and all these things that is what was intended for Israel as a nation of priests to do, he then follows up with, by the way, this is what you rejected. This is the very thing that you had the opportunity to uncover and to reveal, and yet you've chosen to veil it. You've chosen to leave it covered. You've chosen to refuse to do this task. And so simultaneous to revealing this powerful prophetic pattern taking place, mirroring the same witness in the heavens, we're starkly reminded that it is this very role that Israel has rejected as the Levites are instituted in their place. Could it be emphasizing Israel's compromised condition they find themselves in? Though delivered from physical bondage, they've been brought out of Egypt, they're still in a state of exile. In need of more than ever of understanding the role of Yahweh's calendar that has built within it the means for their restoration, the means for him to reveal the panim, his face. My goodness, the house today finds itself in a similar quandary, does it not? Now, it's also interesting to note that this same root, Allah, to ascend, to go up, it's a close cognate of the Hebrew term ilah. Only the vowels have changed. This word ilah indicates a basis for charges, a cause for allegation, or a basis for accusing someone. Could it be indicating and pointing towards Israel's unfaithfulness, towards keeping these set appointments, therefore they remain exiled from his presence? It is a basis for allegation, and it gives him cause to accuse them of breaking the covenant terms. How important is it to keep the Moedim, to keep Shabbat, to know his calendar and appointments. My goodness, in ignorance, I may give basis for being accused and charged with not honoring my covenant obligations. And when we begin to look at this, we find the most glaring missed appointment and simultaneous choice to reject the role of the priestly timekeeper that Adam was charged with from the beginning happened while they were camped here at Sinai. When Israel was to ascend the mountain, Exodus 19, at the divine appointment of Shavuot, when they were to they were to come up. They were to approach before the Menorah, the fiery olive tav on the mountain, to present themselves before the Menorah. And yet we find they remove themselves and say, no, thank you. At the end of this conversation in Exodus 19 and Exodus 20, we find that Yahweh declares the 10 Commandments, the basis and the foundation of the covenant, the ketubah for his people. Israel's response after he declares this is to remove themselves. And I thought it was quite interesting because directly on the heels of this response, Yahweh declares in Exodus chapter 20, verse 24 and 26, it almost seems to completely shift gears. He says, an altar of earth thou shalt make unto me, and shalt sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings and thy peace offerings, thy sheep and thine oxen. In all places where I record my name, it will come unto thee, and I will come unto thee, and I will bless thee. And if thou wilt make an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone, for if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. Neither shalt thou go up, Allah, neither shall you go up to my presence. By steps, ma'ala, the same word for steps of a sundial, the connection to his calendar, his time, unto mine altar, that thy nakedness be not discovered thereon. It seems to indicate Israel has just rejected this very action. And now he begins to reveal their condition. Oh my goodness, it mimics and echoes Genesis 3. You are naked. You are uncovered. The Hebrew phrase for nakedness discovered uses the Hebrew terms erva galah. It's a common Hebrew euphemism for compromising sexual tryst that leads to shame and indicates exile. This is before the golden calf ever happens. Do you think he already knew the heart and the mind's intent the moment they said, no, we're not going to go up and meet with you? There's already an appointment. There's already a back door. There's already someone else that they know they're about to go meet with. And so he uses this terminology to expose Israel before they ever even act on what was in their heart. Erva Galah is the opposite of entering into a marriage covenant, which is what this was supposed to be, which would be the wording kasa erva. He would literally cover one's nakedness. They would be garmented. And when they were garmented or covered kasa, it would literally indicate that there was a change of status. It would indicate, this is my bride. This is my people. These are the ones that have been delivered. They're no longer a slave. Their garments have been changed. There's no change of garments that takes place. Could it be that Israel is seen currently in the same condition as Adam at the fall, with their nakedness exposed, having rejected the covering, the ketubah, their garment that was encoded and etched into his very calendar and divine appointments that would reveal access to him? And we find that this command, as he begins to tell them, build me an altar. This command not only reveals Israel's compromised condition, but he also begins to reveal and encode within the language his redemption. He tells them, make me an altar of earth. The word earth is Adama. Bring me an Adama altar. The Adama, the ground, is what Adam was created from. He tells them, in other words, present me the building tools. Present me the Adama. And when you build this altar, I'll provide the fire. The same fire you did not ascend to come up before, this fire is going to come down, and it's going to light that earthen altar. It's going to set it on fire. It's also interesting to note the stipulations here in Exodus 20. They must build an altar which we understand an altar literally represents a doorway, an access point, a connection between the natural and the spiritual realm, which is the same thing that these feasts are to function as, the same capacity. They're literally an altar doorway, and yet it highlights that you can't ascend to this altar, though. You cannot come up because your nakedness, your carnal, fallen condition is going to be exposed. And so it seems as in the wording and the foundation of what he's beginning to reveal to them is that instead of them being able to come up and expose their nakedness, the fire is now going to come down. The fire will come to the altar. His presence will literally come to them. The menorah, the flame, the fire is now going to come to this Adama and put it on. And he will reveal himself at the scheduled, set appointments. And those that would have ears to hear and eyes to see would understand, my goodness, what has just taken place. He then goes on to tell them that they can also build him an altar of stone, but they must not build it of hewn stone or lift a tool upon it. And I thought it was quite interesting that the term lift up, they may not lift up a tool against this altar, is the Hebrew term nuf, and it means to move to and fro, to wave or to sprinkle. It's first seen here in this verse. Yet this same term is used to describe how the Levites are offered up nuf on behalf of the children of Israel in this Torah portion. Numbers chapter 8, verse 11, what's happening? Let's take a closer look at some of these other terms here describing this altar. He says, you can also make me an altar of stone. The term stone is eben. It's translated as meaning stone, but it comes from the root meaning to build, to establish, to cause to continue. It describes sons being born to continue on and establish the family name. In fact, the word picture of eben is literally the aleph, beit, nun. The aleph as a prefix means I will. It's a declaration. Beit, nun is the word for son. I will son you. You can present me the Adama altar, what Adam was created from, the building materials for me to light the flame within. You can also present me an altar of stone, an altar of sons. I will son you. But then he goes on to say, don't present me an altar of hewn stone, that you have lifted up a tool upon it. Hewn stone is the word gazit, and it means a cutting, a hewing, from the root meaning to cut off or sever. Tool. The word tool is the term chereb, sword or knife. First seen in Genesis chapter 3, verse 24, regarding the flaming sword which keeps the way to the tree of life. The same root stem of the place that they are encamped at, Sinai and Horeb. The flaming sword that's guarding the way to the tree of life, to that access point. When you begin to look at these definitions and piece together what the Hebrew language is revealing, could it be that Yahweh's desire was for Israel to be presented before him in order to see the state of fallen Adam restored? Yet as Israel rejects this, not only is their naked condition highlighted, like Adam's was, but they are put in remembrance of the altar that will function as a doorway, a circumcision that would be required, things that must be cut off. Yet they're warned, if they choose to build a stone altar representing living sons who have been gathered to establish his name, they are not to lift up a cut off, severed faction. When the same terminology is used to describe how they lift up Levi on behalf of the children of Israel, they literally have just done the very thing they were told not to do. They have lifted up a faction of the sons, something that they have severed and cut off from the rest of the stock of the house, and they lift up Levi in their place rather than the whole house obediently presenting themselves. And it indicates from the Hebrew language they have once again cut off access to the tree of life and the restoration of the house. They lifted up a tool against the altar, the connection that he was giving them even in their fallen, exiled condition. We find that Levi now takes on the role, much like that flaming sword, guarding the way. They're entrusted with keeping and caring for this tabernacle. But it is not until the entire house of Israel, all the sons are lifted up and present, themselves to walk as a nation of kings and priests, that they will see the restoration. Amen. We find that Levi encircles the tabernacle. That tabernacle, remember, it's directly connected. It was a clock. It was a calendar. It represents the boundary circuit, his Galil, the boundary of his calendar. Those within find themselves in the territory of the king, protected, access to his presence. Those with outside find themselves outside of that. We find that the rest of the house finds themselves on the outside with a barrier now guarding it. And we find that this is the condition of the house of Israel until Yeshua, the Messiah, arrives bodily upon the earth once again to restore access, who takes on the Adama and becomes the light within the Adama, the fire on the Adama altar. And he walks among his people. And more than one time he makes it clear that his purpose, why he is here, is to gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why? One faction has been lifted up. I'm here to find all the rest of you that have been running away. You're in exile. You've been rejecting your covenant responsibilities. I'm here to gather you all up, and now I will lift up the entire house and cause it to be waved before. That's why now in Messiah he tells us that you are called to be a nation of kings and priests. Why? It's about the restoration of fallen Adam. Now, in fact, looking closer at the pattern of the menorah in the tabernacle, we were told in Leviticus 24, I thought this was quite interesting, that each row of that table of showbread, it also had pure frankincense upon it. And as the light from the menorah would warm the frankincense, it would release an aroma. And it was the smell that was associated with the presence of Yahweh. And that smell, that fragrance in itself literally became a doorway through which the worshiper that was coming would draw near. But when you begin to look closer at that word frankincense itself in the Hebrew language, it's the term lebona. The lamed prefix means two or four. It designates the direction or goal of the action, as well as the goad of that action. It is attached to the root beit nun he bana, which means to build, the same root of eben, stone, to cause to continue, to restore, specifically in regard to family or children, sons and daughters. In other words, it reveals the whole purpose of this ritual that would take place daily in the holy place. It was a continual declaration of the covenant promise and intent of Yahweh to restore and build his house. A declaration that was being released on behalf of the exiled sons who found themselves outside of the tabernacle. In fact, this follows the pattern that we see established in Eden, that even when you're outside and you're in exile, there's something that's happening before the throne that is constantly putting Yahweh in remembrance of his covenant promise to build a house, to continue his name, and it's for his name's sake. And so now you can understand it's in his mercy that he allows Levi to be chosen, but then Levi is tasked with your job, your responsibility is to stand and constantly put me in remembrance regarding the ones that are outside until you find the entire house restored from exile. The first reference of this term, Allah, where we see this pattern established in the garden in Eden, is found in Genesis chapter 2, verse 6. It says, "But there went up, Allah, a mist from the earth, and it watered the whole face of the ground, the Adamah." The mist is what Allah arises, goes up. The word mist is ed. It means mist, vapor, exhalation. It comes from the root concept meaning whatever surrounds, guards, or strengthens. It comes from the root word oud, which means a firebrand or a poker used to stir the fire or embers, to fan the flames. And yet I thought it was interesting that this is the first time we see this term Allah, to ascend, that deals directly with Yahweh's method of keeping time and how he has set times for his people to appear before him. And so we find that in the midst of the garden, something is ascending at a set time. And as it ascends, it is ascending in order to stir and keep the fire going. And as it does this, it surrounds, it guards, it strengthens. It's continually exhaling or releasing life. It then says that this fiery mist watered the Adamah. The word watered is shakah, and it means to give drink, to irrigate, or to water. But this same word is used to describe bones that are damp or moist. And it indicates that these bones have health, that they're alive. And you see this in Job chapter 21, verse 24. Immediately when I saw this, it recalled to my mind the dry bones of Ezekiel chapter 37. They cry out, "We are dry, we have no life, we have no breath." We're in need of this very mist that will come and water and literally stir the flame, stir the fire, strengthen, guard, and surround these bones that have found themselves exiled and in a dead condition. The fiery mist in the garden was designed to exhale, to literally release, give breath or voice in order to restore life and health to the dry bones. A pattern is set into motion, revealing the purpose of the set times, the appointments, and how the calendar of Yahweh was literally designed to surround, to guard, to strengthen the one who found themselves at its hub. Why do you think Adam was put in Gan Eden? I'm going to place you as the hub in the midst of the surrounded, protected place of appointed times. And as long as you remain in that hub with that fiery mist that is constantly stirring up, refreshing, strengthening, guarding, speaking over you consistently, my goodness, no wonder Adam was designed to live forever. His bones would never dry out, wear out, or age because it was a constant renewal, a constant refurnishing, a constant refining. We find that encoded within the Hebrew text that the mist that's ascending from the earth is literally voicing, it's giving breath regarding the covenant promise of restoration, resurrection consistently at those moments or set times, the moments of the Alat, the moments when it is to ascend, when access is available on behalf of the one that might find themselves exiled. The priest was to be doing the same thing within the tabernacle. Every time they went and they lit the menorah, it was a direct connection to the fiery mist ascending, and the words would begin to be released, and it was shining upon the loaves representing the house of Israel, the dry bones who would live again. He was following the actions of Adam in the garden. Amen? From this same root regarding the mist, it is written in the Hebrew, Aleph Dalet, Ed. You put a mem on the end, you get Adam. Adam, attached to this fiery mist or breath is the mem, which literally means a womb, a sacred space, capable of sustaining and in turn releasing that fiery breath. That's what Adam was designed to do. This is the same task Adam was given. He's to be like that mist, that fiery mist. He's to appear, to ascend, to Allah at the set appointments. Why? To exhale, to give voice, to release and declare restoration and covenant promises of Yahweh. Why? Because other parts of creation had been made waste and desolate in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, tohu vabohu. Adam then was charged to become, I'm going to put this fire within you, and you're charged with releasing it and declaring everything that the enemy has tried to lay waste and desolate. You declare restoration. You declare covenant promises. You declare healing and life again. And we find that this is the position that Adam compromises. And therefore he finds himself removed from the hub, from this literally the spoke, the center of this wheel. The garden of appointed times. Ezekiel saw it and called it the wheel within the wheel. Adam was in the center of that. And now he's removed. He's outside of this wheel. except for access to being rejuvenated and restored himself at set appointments when the wheel turns and a door opens. Oh my goodness, it's Passover. Oh my goodness, it's Shabbat. Oh my goodness, it's Sukkot. There's a moment, there's access where you can reach and hear the voice declare over you restoration. Amen. Why do you think that when Adam is sent forth from the Garden of Eden in Genesis chapter 3, we're told that a flaming sword is now going to guard the way, but in addition to that flaming sword, there's a cherub that's placed there. These cherubs show up again in the tabernacle design. And yet I thought it was quite interesting because in Exodus and in Numbers and Leviticus, when we're talking about the tabernacle, he never describes what this cherubim look like. We know it's at the entrance to the Garden of Eden, guarding the way to the tree of life, but he never tells them what this looks like all the way until Ezekiel has a vision and he knows what they are. He's, my goodness, I see the four faces. I see the wheel within the wheel. It's the cherubim. Yahweh takes his throne and he guards the way to the tree of life, and he literally, shakan, he sets a tabernacle right there. Adam in exile was able to constantly go by and look. That's where we're supposed to be, inside of that. We're supposed to be in the midst of that, but now we come and we wait for these moments in time where the doorway is open for us to hear the voice declaring from that place. Now, looking further at this same root of Allah, it's also a cognate of the Hebrew term aleh, Strong's number 5929. Once again, just different vowels. And it's translated as leaf. It's first seen in Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, regarding the fallen covering of Adam and Eve, who were originally clothed in the light of his presence and functioned as one who was constantly appearing, ascending, with rightful access to the presence. Yet now they find their nakedness is uncovered. They are no longer able to ascend, to come before him, and they cover themselves with a poor substitute, fig leaves, or in the Hebrew, aleh. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, it says, "And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves, aleh, together, and they made themselves aprons." I want to look at the term naked. It's Strong's number 5903, arome. It means naked or nakedness, but it's conjugated here as erumim, which has a numerical value of 360. The number of days of Yahweh's complete circuit and calendar, his Galil. What are they naked of? Could it be revealing that in this fallen condition they are outside of the boundary lines, the Galil of that 360-degree complete circuit calendar of his throne and the divine appointments that compose the space where his presence is found? They now find themselves removed, stripped of that garment. And their eyes are opened. In Hebrew, it's the word pachach, and it means to open the eyes, to enable to see things which otherwise have been hidden from the eyes. And in Genesis chapter 3, verse 5, this is the way the serpent explains to them that if you eat from this other tree, that their eyes will be opened, knowing good and evil. The Hebrew term for knowing is yada, to know intimately and through experience. You will walk this out. You will know it. You will be acquainted quite familiarly with something. When breaking this entire phrase down, having looked at the term good multiple times, tov, we know that tov, good, indicates the function and the capacity for which you were created and intended and designed to. Adam was tov. He was functioning exactly the way Yahweh had created and designed him to do in the midst of the garden. So we find that he already intimately yada, he already walks in this, he already knows this. And so then, my goodness, what about this other aspect that you're about to intimately know and walk in? Good and evil, Ra. Ra being then the counterpart or the opposite of Tov. It then indicates to be Ra, to be evil, bad. The opposite of Tov is to not function in that capacity, to be outside of it, to be exiled, to be in a place of waste and desolation, tohu vabohu. Adam got caught up in hearing the words, you'll be like Elohim, and he missed the part where I'm going to intimately know and walk in Ra. I'm going to be outside of what I was created and designed to do. And I'm going to be on the outside looking in, knowing that I missed the mark. The Hebrew term evil or Ra is defined as evil or bad, but it denotes the breaking of some established order or preconceived design or plan. It's a close cognate of another Hebrew word meaning a roar, a loud shout, or a shrill sound. The root connections reveal that it is the breaking of the order of the air by a peculiar vibration. And you can find that definition in Parkhurst Dictionary. Remember, Adam is within Gan Eden, the protected circuit of the Moed, the calendar of Yahweh, where it is the word of Yahweh that is continually declared forth, spoken over him, a continual source of life being stirred up like embers of a fire within him. And now suddenly there's a breaking of that order. The atmosphere has been broken. Another frequency, another word, a shrill sound has pierced through and disrupted that. Adam was Tov. He was functioning in the capacity for which Yahweh had created him, king and priest and the image of the name, yet now he would intimately know and experience what it was to be outside of that. In fact, when you go and look, the first words the serpent speaks. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 1, it says, "Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field, which Yahweh Elohim had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath Elohim said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden." I want to look at the word yea. In English, it seems like just an opening phrase, nothing to it. But those first words were Ra. They disrupted the order. They were a shrill sound that released and pierced the atmosphere and disrupted the order that was supposed to be what was being declared and released. His first word was chosen strategically. Yea is Strong's number 637, is the Hebrew word af. And it means also, yea, though, furthermore, indeed. It's the first frequency or word of the serpent that carries a vibration or a frequency diametrically opposed to the word of Yahweh. This Hebrew term af is identical to another Hebrew word af. Same vowels, same everything. They look exactly the same, which means nostril, nose, by extension the whole face. The nostril or the nose was the doorway through which Yahweh breathed into Adam the nishmot kaim, the breath of lives. It's how he fanned and stirred up the embers of the fiery Adamah that Adam was created from, so that he would become a walking menorah tasked with speaking forth restoration to the rest of creation. The first word of the serpent is intentional. A lot of times as believers, we have a big misunderstanding that we know more than he does, and it's just a little bit. And I can get close to this line, and it's okay. I'm in control. I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. The first word hooked. The first word released something into them that breathed something different on that fire. The first word of the serpent was intentional. The moment Esau listens to these words, she has removed herself from the territory, the boundary that she was intended to dwell within, and another entity speaks, releasing breath into her. Knowing the timing of the king's arrival is extremely important. They were in the garden. They were in this place. And yet they miscalculated, weren't paying attention. Something happened. It wasn't yet time for him to be walking through the garden. Why were they there waiting to meet with someone else? Did they misunderstand who had appeared? Did they think it was the one that had the right to speak to them? Either way, they listened. And yet we find that the covenant promise of restoration is encoded and embedded. It's literally the DNA of the calendar of Yahweh, written, etched in the heavens. A constant voice that would declare if Adam would present himself at the proper timing of the opening of those doors, he would once again find himself within the protected boundary and territory. Why? So that then the one that had the right and was supposed to could breathe into him again. Now, looking back at that Hebrew term for opened in Genesis chapter 3, verse 7, it says that their eyes were opened. It's conjugated as the Hebrew phrase vatipakana. The same letters rearranged form the phrase or the words kin tekufa, the grace of the circuit, the grace of the tekufa. The Tekufa is literally the entire circuit in the heavenlies where we see the constellational signs, the Mazzaroth, revealing the redemption message of Yahweh. And it's the means for his understanding his calculation of time and his calendar. Their eyes were open. Yes, they now would know good and evil. They now are in exile. And yet Yahweh embeds in the midst of this a promise of redemption. Your eyes are open, yes, and you're going to be removed. You're going to be exiled, but you're about to see the grace written in the Tekufa. You're about to see the salvation message that I have etched in the circuit before you ever compromised. Their eyes would now see through experience the protection provided, written, and declared in the circuit of the king. Now fallen and outside of it, yet seeking access to once again be within it. It's interesting to me to note that the Hebrew term for grace, hin, is related to the root chana, to decline, to incline, to pitch one's tent. Where do you want to dwell? To encamp or inhabit. For the nomadic Hebrews, their tents, including the shape of their tents and the shape of the tabernacle, were set up in a circle, mirroring the tent canopy of Yahweh in the heavens. These tents served as a wall, separating the outside of the camp from the inside. It made the inside of the camp a safe space, a protected place, a place that one desired to be within, in the midst of its boundaries. The ket literally represents a fence, a wall, protection, or separation. It's connected to the noon to form this word grace, kin. The noon has the sense or meaning of to continue. In other words, the kin, the grace and favor that was written in the Tekufa, his circuit scroll, forms a wall that continues, just like the tents encircling the camp, protecting that which is found within and creating a graceful and precious place. This is part of the purpose of his calendar, to create a wall, a boundary line, a place of sanctuary. Why? So that when the floodwaters rose, when the fires come, when all manner of devastation and destruction that the enemy can vomit out tries to come against you, you can avail yourself of the Kana, the protected place that his calendar appointments form, and that because I have continually tread the path and directed my steps to meet with him here, I now have proof that I'm in the territory of the king. And because I'm in the territory of the king, if you choose to wage war against me, I don't have to worry, because you now are waging war against the king. And how many realize that the enemy understands this as well, which is why he attempts to ascend and seat himself here. He knows the value and the authority and the power found in this place. It's a boundary line. It's a wall of protection. And it boldly declares all found within its walls belong to the king. And therefore they too will live, be restored, and made whole. Could this be why the exile and the scattering of the lost tribes of Israel went hand in hand with the concealing and a guarding of the understanding of his calendar? They literally lost track of how to keep the appointments. Why? They were in exile. Their nakedness was being exposed. They had no right to access his presence until they reached the terminus, the mark, the set time and the appointment where it would be unveiled and revealed again. This is what Daniel talks about. Like Adam in exile, we were removed, and yet the set time has come to experience and intimately know Yada, the grace of his circuit. It does not matter what the days ahead may hold for you. It does not matter what may be going on right now in your own personal life. It doesn't matter what may be going on in the world. Before Adam ever fell, he etched in the heavens. And it says in Psalms that there is not a place that their voice is not heard. An edict has went out throughout the entire world. The enemy can't claim ignorance. That when you avail yourself and you find yourself in this place, in the boundary lines of the Galil, the circuit of the king, you are promised provision. You're promised life and you're promised restoration. And it's high time that we learn like Adam, like the priest, to literally walk as kings and priests and in turn begin to declare that. How many realize that from your heart, your mouth speaks? And so when you begin to declare the covenant promises of Yahweh, it's an indicator, it's proof, it's evidence. My goodness, that means he must have been the one that's breathed into you. But when our words are saying something else that are contrary to his word, it's evidence. What tree have you been eating from? Who have you been listening to? Who's been allowed to breathe into this vessel, and what fire has been inflamed and is burning? And now we can understand why in the book of Revelation he ends and he begins to culminate on this concept. The restoration of Israel goes hand in hand with Israel learning to walk as a nation of kings and priests. Why? Because the goal, the terminus, the mark is that you're once again going to find yourself in that place and you're there to function in that capacity. Amen? Hope that you've enjoyed this teaching. Shabbat Shalom.